Did you know that the Vatican, besides being one of the smallest countries in the world, holds secrets and stories that defy imagination? From secret tribunals to scandals that shook its foundations, the center of Catholicism is filled with mysteries that intrigue historians, theologians, and the curious around the globe. But what truly lies behind the walls of this city-state that serves as the spiritual heart for billions of people? Hello, curious minds. I'm Code, and this is Discover It, where curiosity knows no bounds. Today, we embark on a fascinating journey to explore the darkest and most surprising mysteries of the Vatican. Get ready to uncover secrets ranging from the judgment of extreme sins to the legend of a woman who supposedly ascended to the papal throne. Are we ready to lift the veil of secrecy from this intriguing institution? Number 1, the Vatican's Secret Tribunal. Little is known about the Apostolic Penitentiary, a tribunal established in 1179 by Pope Alexander III. For centuries, this tribunal has dealt with sins so grave that only the Pope has the authority to grant absolution. Imagine the level of these sins, the kind of thing your local parish priest wouldn't dare handle. This is basically the Supreme Court of sins. Unlike traditional confessions, which can be handled by priests and bishops, the cases dealt with by this tribunal concern matters that could shake the very foundations of the Church. Among the infractions judged are attempted assassination of the Pope and violations of the confessional seal by priests. Until 2009, the existence of this tribunal remained almost entirely secret, revealing the strictly confidential nature of its operations. Its proceedings do not involve public hearings or traditional judicial processes. Deliberations take place between the Pope and the major penitentiary, the leading figure in this body. The confidentiality is so stringent that details of the cases are considered matters of conscience, inaccessible even to other clergy members. What makes this tribunal even more intriguing is how it interacts with theology. It not only adjudicates moral crimes, but also doctrinal matters involving faith and practice. The cases discussed in this forum aren't limited to physical or civil crimes. Many are tied to spirituality and the Church's role in the salvation of souls. This exclusive focus on extreme sin reinforces the aura of mystery surrounding its activities. The tribunal's confidentiality raises questions about transparency within the Church. Critics suggest that this secrecy might be a way to protect influential figures or prevent scandals that could damage the institution's reputation. However, supporters argue that the spiritual nature of these cases requires privacy to preserve the integrity of the souls involved. Though the Apostolic Penitentiary's activities remain hidden from most, its existence is a reminder of the Vatican's centralized power and how spiritual and institutional practices intertwine on a unique level. The tribunal is a bridge between theology, morality, and church governance, a little explored territory that continues to fascinate historians and religious scholars. Number 2, the Vatican Secret Archives. The Vatican Apostolic Archives are undoubtedly one of the world's most mysterious institutions. With over 53 miles of shelves and documents amassed since the 4th century, the archives hold records that could unveil shocking truths about the Church and world history. Despite the name Secret Archives, they aren't completely inaccessible, but the criteria for granting access are stringent, limiting consultation to a few selected scholars. Among the rumors surrounding the archives are supposed evidence of extraterrestrial life, documents questioning the historical authenticity of Jesus, and detailed records of scandals involving popes over the centuries. While no proof supports these claims, the secrecy surrounding the archives fuels conspiracy theories. A recent example is the access to documents from the World War II period, which might shed light on the Church's actions during the Holocaust. The cataloging system is so vast that researchers often struggle to locate specific information. With 53 miles of shelves, it's easier to get lost there than a tourist in Venice. Imagine finding a specific document? Good luck with that. Documents are only made available 75 years after their creation, meaning many records of contemporary events remain out of reach. This sparks suspicion that certain controversial facts are deliberately kept from public knowledge until they lose historical relevance. The 2019 renaming to Vatican Apostolic Archives was an effort to minimize the impact of the term secret. However, the mystery surrounding the institution persists, as the Vatican still tightly regulates what can and cannot be disclosed. Nonetheless, the archives remain a rich source of knowledge for those lucky enough to gain access. The historical importance of the Vatican archives is undeniable. They reflect the Catholic Church's influence over the centuries and offer a glimpse into the complexity of its administration. However, the combination of secrecy and controversy ensures they will continue to be a subject of fascination and debate for years to come. Number 3, the rare resignation of popes. The resignation of a pope is an exceedingly rare event in the history of the Catholic Church. Since the 11th century, only 5 popes have abdicated the throne of St. Peter, defying the norm of serving until death. Each resignation carries unique circumstances, often shrouded in mystery and political intrigue. Among the most notable examples is Pope Benedict XVI, who in 2013 abdicated due to advanced age and health issues, according to his official statement. However, Benedict XVI's resignation sparked intense speculation. Rumors suggest he faced difficulties managing the Church's internal crises, including financial scandals and sexual abuse cases. The Vatileaks, a series of leaks of confidential Vatican documents, reportedly played a critical role by exposing internal conflicts and undermining his authority. Some suggest Benedict XVI was pressured to step down to allow for more vigorous leadership. Previous resignations also carry intriguing stories. In the 11th century, Benedict IX was forced to resign after a papacy filled with scandals, including corruption and immoral behavior. In 1294, Celestine V voluntarily stepped down after just 5 months, citing a lack of ability to govern the Church. He was imprisoned by his successor to prevent potential disputes over the papal throne. Another notable case is that of Gregory XII, who abdicated in 1415 to end the Western Schism, a period when multiple popes reigned simultaneously. His resignation was seen as a gesture of unity for the Church, but was not without resistance and controversy. Each resignation reveals aspects of the power struggles within the ecclesiastical hierarchy and the burden of spiritual leadership. These episodes offer a window into the political and spiritual complexities surrounding the papacy. Although rare, these events show how the Church's leadership faces pressures far beyond religious matters, deeply affecting the public perception of the institution. Number 4, wine consumption in the Vatican. When we think of the Vatican, we associate it with religion, spirituality, and liturgy, but few people link the world's smallest country to a high level of wine consumption. With an annual average of 74 liters per person, the Vatican leads the world in per capita wine consumption. This figure is nearly double that of Italy or France, countries with strong wine traditions, and surprisingly 6 times higher than the U.S. average. Several factors explain this high consumption. The Vatican's population is primarily made up of clergy and older residents who tend to drink more wine due to cultural and social habits. Additionally, wine usage in liturgical celebrations such as the Eucharist significantly contributes to this figure. With so much wine around, Eucharist in the Vatican must be one of the most sophisticated in the world. Something like, "Blessed be the 2015 Merlot." It's important to remember that wine holds sacred symbolism in Christianity, representing the blood of Christ. Wine is also part of meals in the Vatican, which are often communal, promoting moments of fellowship among its inhabitants. These meals are frequently accompanied by high-quality wines, serving both as tradition and as a symbol of hospitality. Access to renowned vineyards and the constant celebratory atmosphere help maintain this high level of consumption. This statistic may be somewhat misleading due to the low population density of Vatican City. With around 1,000 permanent residents and many employees who occasionally consume wine while working there, the numbers may appear disproportionately high. Tourists and visitors also indirectly contribute to these figures by purchasing wine as part of their religious or cultural experiences. Regardless of the reason, wine consumption in Vatican City serves as a reminder of how tradition and religion can intertwine with cultural habits. For outside observers, this curiosity reinforces the fascination Vatican City holds as a place of contrast between the sacred and the mundane. Number 5. Pope Benedict XVI and Nazism. Joseph Ratzinger, later known as Pope Benedict XVI, was born in Germany in 1927 and endured the horrors of World War II during his youth. In 1943, he was forcibly conscripted into the German Nazi Air Defense Corps while still studying in seminary. This involuntary connection to the Nazi regime sparked controversy, especially when he was elected Pope in 2005. Ratzinger was part of the mandatory Nazi youth movement, the Hitlerjugend, but reports indicate that his participation was largely symbolic and unenthusiastic. In 1945, he deserted the army, risking the death penalty, and was captured by Allied soldiers, spending a brief period in a prisoner of war camp. His desertion is often cited as evidence of his opposition to the regime. Nonetheless, historical images and documents showing Ratzinger in military uniform fueled controversies and speculations. Critics argued that his election to the papacy could reopen historical wounds, while supporters highlighted his career as a theologian and advocate of reconciliation as proof of his character. The Simon Wiesenthal Center, dedicated to Holocaust remembrance, investigated Ratzinger's past and concluded that he had no direct involvement in Nazi crimes. The controversy reignited discussions about the Catholic Church's role during World War II. Many questioned how religious figures and institutions dealt with the Nazi regime and whether they opposed or supported its atrocities. During his papacy, Benedict XVI sought to address these issues, including visits to concentration camps and meetings with Jewish leaders. Ratzinger's life story is a powerful reminder of the complexities of personal and institutional history. Although he faced accusations tied to his past, his later life was marked by efforts to promote peace and reconciliation, demonstrating how individuals can overcome difficult circumstances to shape a positive legacy. Number 6. The Du Plessis Orphans. In the 1930s and 1940s, a partnership between the Catholic Church and the government of Quebec led to one of Canada's greatest social tragedies, the Du Plessis orphan scandal. Orphaned children were falsely classified as mentally ill so that Catholic institutions could receive higher government subsidies. This story feels like something out of a nightmare. Turning orphaned children into patients just for money? It's the kind of cruelty that leaves you speechless. While orphanages received $1.25 per day per orphan, asylums earned $2.75 per patient. An estimated 20,000 children were affected by this cruel practice. Interned in psychiatric hospitals without any real diagnosis, many were subjected to inhumane treatments, including lobotomies, electroshock therapy, and severe isolation. These children's lives were marked by abuse, psychological trauma, and the loss of their childhoods in the name of institutional greed. The Catholic Church played a central role in this scheme, running the orphanages and asylums where these abuses occurred. Many orphans lacked birth records or documentation, rendering them invisible to society and dependent on the institutions that were supposed to protect them. Worse still, reports of mistreatment were ignored for decades by both the church and the government. In the 1990s, survivors began organizing to seek justice. Known as the Du Plessis Orphans, they exposed the abuses they endured and pressed for an official apology and financial compensation. While the Quebec government offered a settlement in 2006, the Catholic Church never issued a formal apology, deepening the sense of injustice among the victims. The Du Plessis Orphans case remains a stain on the Church's history and an example of the consequences of a lack of oversight over religious institutions. It underscores the importance of protecting the most vulnerable in society from abuses of power, whether by religious or state entities. Number 7. Priests who have children. Since the 12th century, the Catholic Church has enforced celibacy as a rule for priests, forbidding them from marrying or having children. However, over the years, cases have emerged of priests breaking this vow and secretly fathering children. While this topic was taboo for centuries, in 2017, the Church publicly acknowledged this reality by issuing guidelines for dealing with priests who become fathers. These guidelines were published by the Catholic Church in Ireland, requiring priests to take responsibility for their children. Finally, right? Being a priest shouldn't give someone a free pass to avoid fatherhood responsibilities. Nothing could be more fair. This includes providing financial and emotional support and being present in their children's lives. The release of these norms was a significant step, but also highlighted the breadth of the problem and the challenges in addressing it within an institution that values secrecy. High-profile cases of priests fathering children often spark public scandal and undermine trust in the Church. Many of these children have grown up reporting experiences of abandonment and feelings of shame, while their mothers faced social exclusion or were pressured to conceal the father's identity. A notable example is Vincent Doyle, who founded Coping International, a support group for the children of priests. He discovered his own father was a Catholic priest and decided to advocate for greater transparency. Today, Coping International supports over 50,000 people in 175 countries, revealing the global scope of the issue. Despite this, many children of priests still live in anonymity due to the stigma surrounding their stories. The pressure to keep these situations secret harms not only those directly involved, but also perpetuates a culture of silence within the Church. The existence of guidelines marks progress, but much work remains to fully address the issue. The tension between the ideal of celibacy and the human realities of priests continues to be one of the Catholic Church's major challenges in the 21st century. Number 8. Controversial and cruel popes. Not all popes in history have lived up to the moral ideals they preached. The history of the Catholic Church includes figures who shocked the world with corruption, violence, and improper behavior. One of the most infamous examples is Alexander VI of the Borgia family, known for murders, nepotism, and his obsession with power. Alexander VI, who led the Church from 1492 to 1503, was accused of using his position to enrich his family and consolidate political influence. Alexander VI was like the CEO of corruption. If the Church had been a corporation at the time, he would have been the face of every scandal headline. His reputation was so notorious that it inspired portrayals in fictional works, such as the Assassin's Creed video game series. Alexander had several illegitimate children, which was unacceptable for a religious leader, and was accused of ordering murders to eliminate political rivals. Another striking example is that of Stephen VI, who carried out the grotesque cadaver synod in 897. He exhumed the body of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, put it on trial, condemned him for political crimes, and threw his corpse into the Tiber River. This act sparked outrage in Rome and resulted in Stephen VI's deposition and execution. Other popes, such as John XII, were infamous for their depraved lives. John XII, who became pope at the age of 18, turned the Vatican into a place of parties and orgies. He was accused of adultery, murder, and even invoking pagan gods during ceremonies. His papacy ended violently, cementing his reputation as one of the Church's worst leaders. These episodes demonstrate that the papacy has not always been occupied by figures of high morality. They also serve as reminders of the human and political complexities that have shaped Church history, highlighting issues of power and ethics within an institution that considers itself divine. Number 9. The Legend of Pope Joan. The story of Pope Joan, a woman who allegedly disguised herself as a man and ascended to the papal throne, is one of the Vatican's greatest mysteries. According to legend, she lived in the 9th century and was elected as Pope John VIII after gaining fame as a scholar and cleric. Her true identity was shockingly revealed when she went into labor during a public procession. After this event, Joan was said to have been brutally executed, and the Church allegedly attempted to erase all traces of her existence. A story so bizarre it feels like a medieval urban legend. But if it's true, Joan was the queen of plot twists in the Vatican. Some accounts claim she was tied to a horse and dragged through the streets of Rome to her death. Subsequently, the Church is said to have instituted strict measures to ensure only men could be elected popes, including physical inspections. Although fascinating, the story of Pope Joan is largely discredited by modern historians who view it as a fable created to critique the Church. Many believe the legend emerged as a form of satire targeting the excesses and corruption of the medieval clergy. Nonetheless, it remains alive in popular imagination, inspiring books, films, and heated debates. Some evidence, however, continues to intrigue scholars. Ancient monuments and medieval manuscripts reference the legend, suggesting it was widely accepted at certain times. For example, there is a statue in Rome that many believe represents Pope Joan, although the Church has repeatedly denied any connection. The story of Pope Joan highlights the tension between tradition and change in the Vatican. Whether true or mythical, it remains a powerful metaphor for issues of gender, power, and exclusion in the Catholic Church, prompting reflections on the role of women in religion throughout the centuries. Number 10. Sexual abuse scandals. The sexual abuse scandals involving clergy members are among the greatest crises faced by the Catholic Church in modern times. Since the 1980s, thousands of victims worldwide have come forward to report cases of abuse by priests and cover-ups by church authorities. These revelations have not only damaged the Church's reputation, but also raised questions about its moral and legal responsibility. The most infamous case occurred in the United States, where the Boston Globe exposed in 2002 a network of abuses systematically covered up for decades. It was the scandal that shook the world, a wound so deep that even decades of apologies seem insufficient to fully heal it. Investigations revealed that many accused priests were transferred to other dioceses rather than being punished. The impact of this scandal was so significant that it prompted internal church reforms and inspired the Oscar-winning film Spotlight. In Ireland, the abuse scandals were even more devastating. Government reports revealed how children were abused in church-run schools and orphanages for decades. These disclosures led to the fall of governments and increased skepticism toward the Church's moral authority in the country. The Vatican responded with a series of measures, including public apologies and the establishment of protocols to address abuse cases. In 2019, Pope Francis convened a global meeting of bishops to discuss the issue, pledging zero tolerance for abusers. However, many critics argue that these actions remain insufficient given the magnitude of the problem. These cases have exposed systemic failures within the Church and continue to serve as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked power. For many, the fight for justice and transparency is a matter of restoring lost trust, not only among victims but also among all the faithful. Number 11. Vatican, the capital of crime. It may seem unlikely, but the Vatican, the smallest country in the world, is also one of the crime capitals in terms of per capita statistics. With fewer than 1,000 residents and only 110 acres, the state records surprisingly high crime rates. In 2006, 341 civil cases and 486 criminal cases were reported in a single year. These numbers would be alarming anywhere, but in the Vatican, they stand out due to the population crime discrepancy. Much of this crime is attributed to the millions of tourists who visit the city annually. Tourists are often targets of petty thefts, such as pickpocketing, which takes advantage of crowds at iconic sites like St. Peter's Square and the Sistine Chapel. Despite this, the Vatican's jurisdiction is limited as the state has no prison system. When crimes occur, offenders are often sent to Italy for trial and sentencing. The Vatican's residents themselves are rarely involved in these crimes, but the lack of a robust police force within the state exacerbates the problem. Security relies primarily on the Swiss Guard and the Vatican Gendarmerie, which focus more on protecting the Pope and Vatican properties. The absence of sufficient policing resources to address minor crimes creates a situation where many offenses go unnoticed or unresolved. Additionally, the Vatican's judicial system is minimal, with only one judge and a general attorney. This makes it impossible to handle the volume of cases, especially considering the complexity of crimes committed by tourists or foreign visitors. Although agreements with Italy address these issues, the system is not foolproof and depends on international cooperation. Despite its high per capita crime rates, most crimes in the Vatican are relatively minor and involve thefts. However, the paradox of one of the world's most sacred places being a statistical crime hub remains an intriguing curiosity that challenges public perceptions of the state. Number 12. Financial scandals of the Vatican Bank. Since its founding in 1942, the Vatican Bank, officially known as the Institute for the Works of Religion (IOR), has been embroiled in a series of financial scandals. Vatican Bank, or a vault of secrets. From the start, it seems the math never quite added up, and I'm not just talking about numbers. Initially created to manage church funds during World War II, the bank quickly gained a reputation for secrecy and corruption. Among its controversial operations was the facilitation of financial transactions that circumvented Allied restrictions during the conflict. In the 1970s and 1980s, the IOR scandals exploded into public view. One of the most notorious cases was the collapse of Banco Ambrosiano, which had close ties to the Vatican. The bank lost over $1.4 billion in unsecured loans, many linked to IOR accounts. This episode was connected to the mysterious murder of Roberto Calvi, the director of Banco Ambrosiano, who was found hanging under a bridge in London. Additionally, the bank was implicated in money laundering schemes involving criminal organizations, including the Italian mafia. In the 1980s, Archbishop Paul Marcinkus, then head of the IOR, was accused of participating in illegal activities but avoided trial due to diplomatic immunity. This case reinforced the perception of the bank as a safe haven for clandestine financial operations. In recent years, the Vatican has taken steps to reform the bank and restore its reputation. Under the leadership of Pope Francis, the IOR underwent rigorous audits and increased financial transparency. In 2013, hundreds of suspicious accounts were closed, including those linked to mafia members and other criminal organizations. Despite these efforts, the bank continues to face criticism and challenges in regaining public trust. The case of the Vatican Bank highlights the complexities of a religious institution dealing with the financial world. Although it was established to support charitable works, the IOR has become an example of how the blend of spiritual and financial power can lead to controversies and crises of confidence. Number 13. The Vatican's role in Nazi escapes. After World War II, many Nazi officials sought refuge outside Europe to escape justice. Surprisingly, documents reveal that the Vatican played a significant role in the escape of figures such as Adolf Eichmann, Joseph Mengele, and Klaus Barbie. With the help of the Red Cross and the Vatican Refugee Commission, thousands of former Nazis received falsified travel documents to start new lives in countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Canada. The use of documents known as 10-100S, issued by the Red Cross, was facilitated by Vatican references. The Catholic Church justified its assistance as a humanitarian act, arguing it was protecting individuals in perilous situations. However, many critics point out that the church hierarchy was aware of the true identities of these fugitives and their crimes during the Nazi regime. This escape network, known as the Ratlins, operated primarily in Italy and was largely organized by influential figures within the church. One key figure was Bishop Alois Hudel, who helped hide Nazis in monasteries and provided them with documents to flee. Hudel was a declared supporter of the Nazi regime and used his position to facilitate the transport of war criminals. Revelations about the Ratlins sparked outrage and tarnished the Vatican's reputation regarding the Holocaust. Despite calls to release complete records from the period, the Vatican has kept many documents confidential. Only in 2020 did Pope Francis order the partial opening of these archives, allowing for a closer examination of the Church's actions. The Vatican's involvement in the Ratlins remains a controversial topic. For many, it is a moral stain on the Church's history and a reminder of the impact of political decisions on religious institutions. This issue raises difficult questions about balancing Christian compassion and moral responsibility in the face of crimes against humanity. Number 14, the Rwandan genocide and the church. The role of the Catholic Church in the 1994 Rwandan genocide is one of the darkest chapters in its history. During the 100 Days of Massacre, which resulted in the deaths of approximately 800,000 people, the church faced accusations of complicity, with reports of clergy members facilitating or directly participating in atrocities against the Tutsis. Churches, traditionally seen as places of refuge, became sites of extermination. This is a part of the church's history no one likes to remember, but it's impossible to ignore. A massacre of this scale and direct involvement? Terrible and revolting. A brutal example is Father Athanasi Saramba, who ordered his church to be demolished with 2,000 people inside. Other cases include nuns who handed over women and children hiding in convents to militants. These actions not only betrayed the community's trust, but also exposed the ambiguous role of the church in times of crisis. After the genocide, the church faced intense international pressure to acknowledge its responsibility. In 2017, Pope Francis apologized for the crimes committed by clergy members during the genocide, but for many survivors, this was not enough. A sense of impunity persists, especially as some perpetrators fled and sought refuge in other countries, often with institutional help. Rwandan courts and the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, ICTR, prosecuted several religious figures involved, such as Saramba, who was sentenced to life imprisonment. However, many still believe the church as a whole must take a more proactive stance in repairing the damage, not just by apologizing, but by promoting justice and reconciliation. This episode is a reminder of the moral responsibility of religious institutions and the danger of collusion with genocidal regimes. For the Catholic Church, the Rwandan genocide remains an open wound that demands reflection, transparency, and a renewed commitment to the Christian values of protection and compassion. Number 15. The Vatican's army of exorcists. Exorcism is a practice many associate with the Middle Ages or horror films, but for the Vatican, it remains a living and essential tradition. Since the 1990s, the number of exorcisms performed by the Church has grown exponentially, particularly in Italy, where thousands of cases are reported annually. In response to this demand, the Vatican has created a global network of trained exorcists to address demonic possessions, bringing an ancient practice into the 21st century. The most prominent figure in this field was the late Father Gabriele Amorth, who served as Rome's chief exorcist for decades and claimed to have performed over 130,000 exorcisms in his lifetime. Despite controversy, Amorth argued that the rise in possessions was linked to people's estrangement from faith and the growth of occult practices. He also founded the International Association of Exorcists in 1990, which was officially recognized by the Vatican in 2014. With advances in technology, exorcisms have undergone curious adaptations. Some exorcists, like Cardinal Ernest Simoni, reported performing liberation rites over the phone, while others began using digital tools such as video calls to assist believers in remote locations. Though it may seem odd, these methods highlight how the Church seeks to balance tradition and modernity to meet the spiritual needs of its followers. The preparation of an exorcist is no simple task. Before conducting any ritual, priests undergo rigorous theological and psychological training to distinguish genuine cases of possession from mental health conditions. Often, they collaborate with doctors and psychiatrists to ensure the issue is not due to psychological problems. This approach aims to avoid mistakes and ensure the practice is treated with seriousness and responsibility. Despite its official recognition, exorcism remains a controversial topic. Critics argue that the practice lacks scientific basis and may perpetuate superstitions. However, for those who believe, exorcism represents a hope for liberation and protection from spiritual malevolence. The growing number of requests worldwide shows that, regardless of differing opinions, this tradition remains deeply rooted in the faith of millions. The Vatican is much more than a spiritual center. It is an enigmatic web of stories, secrets, and controversies that span centuries. From secret tribunals judging the gravest sins to archives that may hold shocking truths, This small city-state continues to fascinate the world with its blend of faith, power, and mystery. If you enjoyed this journey of discoveries, don't forget to leave a like, share with friends, and comment below on what caught your attention the most. And of course, subscribe to the channel for more content where curiosity knows no limits.